Felix Tshisekedi is declared the winner in the Democratic Republic of Congo's historic presidential election. Now a rival is challenging the credibility of the results. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir vows to stay in power as protests rage against his 30-year rule. And tackling the considerable stigma surrounding mental health in Nigeria. We'll have a report. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. It has been a historic day in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The much anticipated results from the December 30th presidential elections are out, and the Electoral Commission has declared Felix Tshisekedi as the first democratically elected president in more than 50 years. However, opposition candidate Martin Fayulu is challenging the credibility of the election results, calling last month's vote a fraud. He says it was rigged.
Mieux que quiconque, vous savez.
You know better than anyone that this proclamation is based on rigged, invented and fabricated results, built from scratch from inside the obscure offices of FCC. The results do not reflect the truth of the ballots. This is obviously unacceptable electoral fraud of a nature that will provoke general chaos across the country.
The Election Commission declared Wednesday Tshisekedi, the leader of one of Congo's oldest opposition parties, the Union for Democracy and Social Progress, also defeated key contender Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary, who was backed by President Joseph Kabila. The official results are fueling speculation that outgoing President Joseph Kabila made a deal with Tshisekedi to declare him the winner. Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary, President Kabila's hand-picked successor, finished a distant third. If the results stand, it could lead to the country's first democratic transfer of power since independence from Belgium in 1960. Supporters of Tshisekedi celebrated in the streets with police nearby, hoping to discourage violence that erupted during the campaign.
We came here because we are happy. We expressed our wishes in the polls, and we are happy that Corneille Nangaa, the president of the Electoral Commission, announced the president that we ourselves chose, because we are fed up to be ruled by that president, Kabila.
Well, Kabila is due to leave office this month after 18 years in power and 2 years after the official end of his mandate. The U.S. Embassy in Congo had warned U.S. citizens to leave the country ahead of the announcement of election results. The election has been over 2 years in the making, postponed twice by the ruling coalition, the Common Front for the Congo. Congo's Catholic Church, one of the country's most respected institutions, challenged Thursday's official results, suggesting its tally did not give victory to opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi. For more on the basis for the Catholic Church's claim, Anastasia Tudish joins me by phone from Kinshasa. Good evening, Anastasia.
Good evening, Vincent.
So let's take it from there. On what grounds is the Catholic Church saying that these are not the true results?
The grounds are very simple, according to SEMCO. The counting of the votes from on their part is not. When they count their own votes, it's not. They don't come out with the same result.
Are they explaining how they were counting those votes? Because the Electoral Commission has the sole mandate of counting those votes. How are they counting the votes? Are they explaining to the citizens?
They did not explain to us, and not only did they not explain, they also don't want to give a name. They refused. I was there at the press conference when they announced, when they did their declaration, and we asked them, so could you give us the name, since you are claiming that the name you came up with is not the same as the Senate? And the Secretary General refused. He said that it was not his role, and it was Senny's role to give the name. The only thing he could do was speak the truth to the power and say that, and come up with the information they gave us.
And as for Martin Fayulu, his insistence that he's the winner, is it also based on what the Catholic Church said, or what evidence does he have?
Martin Fayulu is basing his claiming on him being the winner on his own counting, because he had his own witnesses, And he had also his own system. I guess he is happy that the Senko declaration is matching his, but he has his own council.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Fayulu, of course, is suggesting that if he's not declared the president, then there could be chaos in the Democratic Republic of Congo. What are we hearing? What are you seeing on the streets? Are people concerned at all?
Not only are people, well, it depends on people. People who know the DRC and the way things work here told me, oh, it's nothing. After a few days, things will get back in order. But what happened this morning around 11 was that there had been some fights between youth from UDPS and from Lamuka, and they fought because of that. And I asked one of Martin Fayulu's close aides, and he told me that this is just the beginning. We didn't even organize that. This was spontaneous. So just imagine if we tell our people to react in the street.
Well, we just hope for peace. Anastasia, thank you very much for your reporting. Anastasia Tudisha reporting from Kinshasa. Now, the Congo elections attracted a lot of attention for both the prospect of finally witnessing a peaceful transfer of power and fear that a disputed outcome could spark another round of bloodshed. VOA's Abdrahman Dia recently returned from the DRC, where he covered the elections, and he now joins me here to tell us a little more about all the issues that surrounded these elections. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
And thank you for the good job you did while there. Now, first, from what you're hearing, is there anybody on the side of Kabila and Mr. Shadari that has spoken up to this point?
Not so far, but Lambert Mende, the spokesperson of the government, did come out and talk to some media this morning, and basically he slammed France for saying that those results did not reflect the real will of the people, and that is something that we heard before. They're talking about a neo-colonial power, still missing their colonial rules. So those are the kind of speech that we're getting from Mende, who as so far is the one from the ruling coalition who has spoken out.
Well, of course, if you go back to history, one wonders whether France and Belgium have any credibility to talk about the situation in the DRC. But in terms of some of the issues that surrounded this election, we know that there were issues that led even to the postponement, or rather no election in the eastern part of the country, and of course the burning of some of the electoral material in Kinshasa itself. Did you get the sense that this created enough suspicion to the extent that people can think the results are cooked?
The suspicion is definitely there, we have to say. And given the fact that the church is very credible in the DRC, and they have been in the forefront of this fight for the country to have finally elections. So when they came out and said that they know who the winner was, some question, the move. But it did put some pressure to the Electoral Commission and to the government. Now they came out again saying that, well, this is not the result that we have. It put even more pressure to everybody. So it's not over. And we have an important date coming. That's January 15, when the Constitutional Court will actually give its final, seal on the whole thing.
Now, but at the end of the day, people feared that Kabila could manipulate the election so that Ramazan Shadari wins the election. Was it surprising that at least an opposition member won? And for that matter, Tshisekedi?
It is, and it is historic in that sense, because if it holds, as you were saying, that would be the first time since 1960, and it's huge. And that's why I think Fayulu will have a smaller margin of maneuver, because then, if it was Shadari, it would be easier to protest. Now it is another opposition leader. What will they do? It's kind of a fine line. Both the church and Fayulu will have to walk.
We'll watch and see what's happening. Abdrahman, thank you very much for your great reporting and for joining us today.
Thank you.
That's VOA's Abdrahman Dia, and want to thank him very much. Now, In southeastern Africa, families in rural Malawi are sending girls as young as 12 years old for initiation, a traditional cultural practice that marks a child's entry into adulthood. But child rights campaigners say the ritual entices young girls into early sex, marriage, and teenage pregnancy, forcing many to drop out of school. One local organization is seeking to change this by teaching initiation counselors to give girls age-appropriate information. Lamek Masina has more from Mulanje.
Madalitso Makosa was 13 years old when she underwent a traditional Malawian initiation ritual to become an adult.
After the initiation ceremony, the counselors advised me to perform a kusasa fumbi, or removing the dust ritual, with a man of my choice. I chose to sleep with my former boyfriend, but unfortunately I became pregnant.
Removing dust refers to a girl losing her virginity, often without proper protection, to become an adult. Those who become teenage mothers pay the price for this tradition.
When I discovered that I was pregnant, I was devastated because I had to drop out of school. I'm now struggling to get support to take care of my baby. I wish I had continued with my education.
In this initiation demonstration arranged for a reporter, counselors show how they prepare girls for marriage and for sex.
I give them these lessons so that they will keep their man and prevent him from going out to look for other women. Because if he goes out and finds excitement in other women, he's likely to dump her.
Child rights campaigners say the initiation ritual fuels Malawi's high rate of child marriage. Half of the girls here marry before age 18. Malawian group YouthNet and Counseling, YONECO, wants to keep girls in school with a more age-appropriate initiation ritual.
That's a traditional cultural thing that people believe in, and it will be very difficult to just say, let's end initiation ceremonies. But what we're saying is, can we package the curriculum in such a way that the young people are accessing the correct curriculum at the correct time?
YONECO is working with the initiation counselors and the traditional leaders to tone down Malawi's initiations. Already some areas are banning the practice of encouraging sex after the ceremony.
We said, no. This is why we have a lot of dropouts from school. That's why we have the population has just shot so high, just because of that. Because a lot of girls now, they have got babies. Most of them, they are not in marriage.
To further discourage teenage pregnancies, traditional leaders like Chikumbu are dividing girls' initiation rituals into two camps. One is a simple ceremony for teenage girls like Makosa, while the other provides sex education for older girls who are preparing to marry. Lamek Masina for VOA News, Mulanje.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook. So check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. And we'll be right back.
Voices, we're talking about the news and issues you're talking about, sharing stories of development and growth across Africa,
around the world, and in our lives. Topics that inform, empower,
and change the rules.
It's time for Our Voices with me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick,
and Hadiza Kiari,
and Ayan Bior,
and Orion Itangi Shaka.
It's time for Our Voices.
Tensions are still high in Sudan Thursday, one day after thousands of supporters cheered President Omar al-Bashir in Khartoum. His opponents of Bashir rallied a short distance away, calling for him to resign. But Bashir told his supporters he will not step down, saying those seeking power need to do so through free and fair elections. Some of the largest protests to hit the streets of Sudan in recent weeks were met with clouds of tear gas on Wednesday. At least 3 people were killed. Sudan has been gripped by almost daily demonstrations for weeks amid anger over a shortage of bread and foreign currency. Wednesday, hundreds took to the streets of Omdurman, Sudan's second-largest city, chanting freedom, peace and justice, and revolution is the people's choice. Political activist Rudwan Dawood told viewers South Sudan in Focus radio program that he saw 2 people injured by live ammunition. Police were quoted as saying they knew of 3 deaths and several people being wounded, and that this was being investigated. Now, for more on what is fueling the latest protest in Sudan, I'm joined by Mohi Omar, a senior program assistant for Sudan and South Sudan at the United States Institute of Peace. Mohi, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
Now, there have been demonstrations in Sudan over the years, and some people may look at this and say it has always happened. What's different this time?
Well, one thing that I would like to point out is basically this time what you see across the country is that a greater participation in the demonstration. Previously, you would see people demonstrating in a given city or given state, but this time, luckily and good for Sudanese people, is that you see people participating in demonstration and protest across the country. Like 2 days ago in eastern part of the country, Al-Qadarif state, you have a protest that is estimated to be hundreds of thousands of participants in the protest. And yesterday, you saw in Khartoum and other cities and states in the country as well. So this time, it's completely different. And another point I would like to add to that is that previously, you would see only young people, or to a large degree, young people participating. But this time, it's across ages, across ethnicities, across states. So it's just across the country.
And we've seen images from Sudan, including inside hospitals, tear gas. How has been the response compared to the past, the response from the government side?
The government does always what the government does, obviously. Their response is very clear that they would use force and they would silence protesters. They would kill, they would protest, they would do everything that is possible to make sure that they continue to silence the protest. But obviously, the more they use force, the more people are protesting on the street. So it has the opposite effect, as we see.
Yeah. Now, Omar al-Bashir might say, we are going through some economic hardships here. We're not able to provide the things that are essential to people. The bread is not coming easy. So is this about him going out, being kicked out of office, or is it about just the country going through some difficult times?
Well, let's remember, this is the same government that caused those economic crises, right? It's not just, as they would like to say, it's a period that is experiencing economic hardship. Yes, it's correct, but who caused those problems, right? To begin with, number one. And number two, this crisis is not just shortages in bread, as maybe the bread was simple to begin this process. This is a structural economic and political problem that the government has been in denial to address for the last few years.
Yeah. Omar Bashir says, you want me out, let's meet at the ballot box. If you want to defeat me, you take me out democratically. Can an election take Omar al-Bashir out? And if not, can the military, can people on the streets do it, given that he has a loyal military on his side?
Definitely. People on the street can do it. Sudan historically has toppled dictators twice. In 1964, Aboud was toppled in a peaceful protest. In 1985, you have Nimeri, who was toppled also by a peaceful demonstration. Sudanese people have history of doing that, so they have the ability to do that. But speaking of fair and free election, let's remember, this is the guy who came to power through a military coup. He knew nothing about free and fair election. I don't think Sudanese people are willing to wait until 2020. That is to take him out. It's just, I don't think that's feasible, given the current political and economic crisis that our people experiencing in the country.
And in a few seconds, we're getting accurate information about the number of deaths?
But definitely, according to a lot of international organizations observing the situation on the ground and also local activists, it's more than 40 people have died so far. And we also have more than like 800 people are detained. So really it's very sad.
Mr. Omar, we really, really appreciate your insights. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate that. Well, that's Mohi Omar, who is the Senior Program Assistant for Sudan. And now, we take a break. We'll be right back. Important joining us now is Africa 54's health correspondent Lino Mudu with new information on parents, kids, and alcohol. Lino.
That's right, Vincent. A new study conducted in Norway says kids may be more likely to develop depression and anxiety when their parents are regular drinkers, even when neither parent drinks enough to be considered an alcoholic. Researchers studied over 8,700 children from over 6,000 two-parent families who participated in a health survey when the kids were 13 to 19 years old. Overall, about 24% of the children had depression or anxiety or both. Children were 52% more likely to have anxiety or depression when both parents regularly drank alcohol. The researchers say while the study wasn't a controlled experiment designed to prove whether or how parents' drinking habits might directly impact kids' mental health, it's possible that parents just become less attentive to children's needs when they drink. Now, a young Nigerian woman helms an organization that is using a helpline, social media, and support groups to tackle the considerable stigma surrounding mental health in the West African nation. Hawa Ojefo is at a meeting with a mental health support group in Lagos, a very recent development in Nigeria. The members gather regularly to share their experiences, challenges, and general perspectives about living with mental illness. In 2015, Hawa was diagnosed as bipolar and suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder after being sexually assaulted several years before. She says sharing her experience with others was difficult.
I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine in UK, and she was like, you know what, like, look for a support group. Like, over here, there are support groups for different kinds of things, and it's very, very, I mean, the impact is really good, and it helps people a lot. And I looked around, and I didn't find any. And I'm like, you know what, then? And she's like, no, just start it, really. And that was just what I did. I didn't overthink it.
The positive impact of the support group has led to a helpline, numerous blog posts, and social media platforms in support of mental health awareness under an initiative Hawa calls She Writes Women. But Hawa and other mental health advocates have a tough job. It is largely a taboo subject in Nigeria.
When people say mental health, what an average Nigerian would hear, except you are exposed, whether through reading or through traveling, is that someone has run mad. And then our media has perpetuated that narrative also. When you watch movies or listen to a song, when people say colo mental or mental, it equals madness. So we cannot blame anybody at that level.
In Nigeria, I don't think they really do seek for help. Some just die in silence, and some think they can maybe pray off the whole issue and get fine.
Nigeria's Ministry of Health estimated last year that up to 30% of the country suffers from some form of mental illness, and the ministry says the national suicide rate is on the rise.
It's a mindset. It's a belief issue. It's conditionings of deeply rooted beliefs and values that we have held on to for a long time that are affecting our reality. And when you can get through that and you can break down mind blocks and break down barriers for people, you begin to see that they live out their fullest potential.
Hawa says the helpline gets a minimum of 100 calls per day. She's leveraged the success of She Writes Women to start a walk-in clinic called Safe Place, where people can receive treatment and information. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Linor Mudu. Vincent, back to you.
Well, Leno, thanks a lot. Now be sure to watch Leno Madu's Health Reports every Tuesday and Thursday on Africa 54. Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. It features great design, music, and unique mentor challenges, and it was created in Africa. Chukia Kimani and Ben Myers developed a university project called Semblance. It's now one of the most popular indie video games to come out of South Africa. The duo now run a company and studio called Nyamakap and have traveled the world to show Semblance at prestigious gaming events like PAX East Games.com, E3 and EGX. Semblance is now available on PC, Mac, and Nintendo Switch. South Africa ranked third on the continent in gaming industry revenue last year with $118 million in gaming revenues. Well, next up, an Israeli company is showing how everyday objects can come alive by using their 3D scanning technique at the Consumer Electronics Tech Show in Las Vegas. The Clone app uses the standard camera on the smartphone to scan everyday objects such as this toy horse. It works with the mat that the horse is standing on to calibrate measurements and create a digital representation of the toy. But the app also animates the content. In this case, it makes the horse run around in circles in the augmented reality mode. The app was launched in 2018 and has been downloaded 1 million times. The future of mobility is also on display at CES. Mercedes-Benz is sharing its view of future self-driving tech. Inside the Urbanetic concept car, there is no need for a steering wheel. A part of display in the roof lets passengers know when they are approaching their destination. Harley-Davidson is using the show to announce the commercial launch of its first electric motorcycle, a LiveWire. The motorcycle will have a cellular connection, as many cars do these days, so people can keep track of their motorcycle's charge or check where they parked it through an app. Meanwhile, here, Mobility is launching a new social urban transit, a transit app rather, to compete with Uber. With Samo, short for social mobility, users can compare different urban transportation options all on one platform. And that's what's trending today. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching, and from all of us here in Washington, have a good night.